Hi, good evening. I'm Rashid Al-Bustaki,
And I'm Anud Kurdi.
and today we'll be talking about the Temple of Athena Nike. There is a lot of history that revolves around this temple. We won't be covering all of it in detail, but rather the specifics that make this temple stand out. So without further ado, Anud, how are you today? And let's take our viewers to this temple.
Thank you, Rashid. I'm great today, and yes, let's begin. The Temple of Athena Nike, as the name suggests, was a temple built to worship Athena, the goddess of wisdom and victory. It was created by an architect and sculptor named Callicrates. He was also responsible for creating the Parthenon, which also was built for the goddess Athena. It was created around 420 BCE during the High Classical period in the Athenian Acropolis. It was also made out of marble. As we can see in front of us, this is the Acropolis, and the small temple to the right is the Temple of Athena Nike. In this area, there are other famous structures like the Erechtheion, Propylaea, and the already mentioned Parthenon, which are much larger than the Temple of Athena Nike.
The Temple of Athena Nike is the smallest structure in the area. It has been said from tourist reviews that some people initially miss seeing the temple. The Propylaea is also a massive structure that probably attracts a lot of attention and is probably the main reason for that issue. So as you know, this temple was made to worship Athena, one of the Greek goddesses. Inside this temple, there is a statue of Athena as well, which would be very common in Greek temples. Briefly mentioned earlier was that Athena was the goddess of victory, which was the reason this structure was built. Hence the name Nike, which means victory. The most famous statue inside is Nike adjusting her sandal, created in 410 BCE. Like most figures we see during this high classical period, there's a sense of balance in the figure in which we call contrapposto. If we quickly look at this figure in comparison, the Reis warrior, we see contrapposto, which involves an engaged left arm and disengaged right arm, which then meant the left leg would be disengaged and the right leg engaged. This again to show balance. Moving over, however, we see an unusual design. The figure shows no balance, which is most likely because the wings, if you notice above her, is what's keeping her balance. It looks like both her legs are engaged, which isn't how contrapposto works. Also, to what I said initially, it does not need to be the left leg and right arm specifically. It can work vice versa as well, as long as one leg is engaged and the other side is disengaged. Like most temples, worshippers were only allowed to see the temple from a distance.
Yes, if we look at the layout of the temple, we see the general designs which would have been found at temples. Moving back to your point, worshippers would be able to walk behind these columns, seen here, and the only priests and higher rankings would be allowed inside the cella.
And what is the cella?
The cella is an area inside the temple, generally where you will find the statue of the god. The cella here is visible to worshippers, however, some are a lot more private and are only viewed by priests and the family members of the deceased.
Moving outside momentarily, we can see a railing nearby the Temple of Athena Nike. This is called a parapet, which is simply a protective railing to keep people from falling off, which was built after construction of the temple. The parapet also has some low relief carvings to match the theme of Athena Nike. We can see that there's only one entrance into the temple, even though there's staircases all around it, around the entire structure, there's only one entrance. Clearly seen here, this area behind the temple was made for a symmetrical and aesthetically pleasing sight. This was the idea behind the temple, so that if anyone were to look at it from any angle, it would still be visibly attractive.
Moving on to the columns, Callicrates built the temple in an Ionic order out of white pentalic marble, which was one of the most common materials for sculpting. We can see 4 columns placed at the front and 4 at the back of the temple, and none on the sides. Each column of this temple was made as a single block and then placed. This is called amphiprostyle.
So why did they decide to use an Ionic order and not a Doric order, which was used on the Parthenon nearby? Wouldn't it make sense to have the structures have similar designs?
Well, to begin, the Parthenon is a very large and intimidating structure. To have ionic columns supporting the structure would look somewhat wrong. If we compare the two orders, there are clear differences between them. Doric orders have very large and stumpy columns and have the triglyph above. The Ionic order, however, suits this temple better because they are long and thin, have a base and the crowns on top called the capital. It's just a lot more detailed and designed. It was thought to be more feminine as well.
The history of this temple involved many reconstructions over its lifetime. The temple was reconstructed a total 4 times. It first began during the Greek versus Ottoman War in the 17th century. The Ottoman Turks took down several parts of the temple to use as fortifications during the war. Fortifications are basically barricades or areas which are heavily defended by using materials to block attackers. In the 19th century, Greece regains their independence and have the temple rebuilt once more, but not to the initial state it was in. Many statues were lost during the war as well, unfortunately. In the 20th century, specialists saw that the original construction was not par with what it used to be, so once again it had to be rebuilt. And then finally, in the year 2000, the temple had to be dismantled because certain parts of the temple were in bad condition and falling apart. A team of conservatives started the reconstruction, repairing whole pieces by taking them entirely apart. The image you see now is the latest reconstruction of the temple.